Shalom and welcome back to Israel with Aline. Today we are going to follow in the footsteps of the Apostle Paulo and the Ark of the Covenant. We are in Tel Afec, a very important place for both the Old and New Testaments, but still unknown to most people. Come with me to discover the history and archaeology of this place. So if you're ready, let's get started. Tel Afec has over 5,000 years of history. Canaanites, Egyptians, Philistines, Greeks, and Romans lived here. And a little over 2,000 years ago, the one who conquered this whole region was King Herod the Great. And he changed the name from Afec to Antipatris in honor of his father Antipatris. And that means Afec and Antipatris are two different names for the same place. And he takes this area, which was mostly in ruins, and rebuilds the city. And among the many works he did here, he also built this street. We are walking on an original street that's over 2,000 years old. But King Herod the Great didn't just build the street. He also built a fortress here with the same name, the fortress of Antipatris. Besides an Odeon, which is right here next to us. Shall we go check it out? An Odeon is a small Roman theater, as you can see it here. We know that King Herod the Great had a mix of many cultures and backgrounds. His father was Edomite, his mother was Nabatean Arab, his grandfather converted to Judaism, and he had a Roman education. I mean, Herod was really a mix of cultures, religions, and influences. But from all of this, we know that Herod really liked Roman culture. And we see that also in his buildings. He builds theaters, hippodromes, pagan temples. He really brings Roman culture into Israel, even though many times the local population doesn't like it and even revolts against these practices. Because when we see this theater here that looks so beautiful, we have to remember that music and dance shows with pagan themes were probably held here. Here behind us, we can see that the vegetation is covering most of the theater, but it was indeed found. It's underneath all of this. But what I want you to look at here with me is exactly this side, right here where the stage was, where these pagan shows took place. So here, imagine the stage with a show happening on it, but look how interesting. Here we see these arches. They supported the underground part of the theater. So here it was like there were underground wings. This is interesting because it also makes experts believe that this wasn't the only underground structure here, that yes, there are other constructions underground that haven't been discovered yet. That makes perfect sense because the vast majority of Afec hasn't even been excavated yet. But we didn't come here to watch pagan shows. We came to talk about the biblical passages from the Old and New Testaments that happened here. So let's leave the Odeon and continue our biblical adventure. About 40 years after the death of King Herod the Great, the one walking these same streets is the Apostle Paul. But he doesn't walk here freely. Instead, he is brought to Antipatris by force. That's because he had been arrested in Jerusalem And when he was about to be flogged by the Roman soldiers, he told them that he was a Roman citizen and that he had the right to be judged by Caesar himself. And that was true. Paulo was originally from Tarsus in Cilicia, Asia Minor. The commander ordered that Paulo be taken to the fortress and interrogated under flogging to find out why they were shouting against him like that. When they were tying him with straps, Paulo asked the centurion who was there, "Do you have the right to flog a Roman citizen without him having been condemned?" Immediately, those who were about to interrogate him with floggings withdrew. The commander himself became afraid when he learned that Paulo was a Roman because he had ordered him to be tied up. Then the soldiers, according to their instructions, took Paulo and brought him at night to Antipatris. And the next day they returned to the barracks, leaving the horsemen to go on with him. When they arrived in Caesarea and delivered the letter to the governor, they presented Paulo before him. And then does Paulo have to be taken from Jerusalem to Caesarea Maritima? Is that because Caesarea Maritima was the capital of the Judean province then? That was the administrative center of the Romans. But the journey from Jerusalem to Caesarea was a very long trip to make in just one day. And that's why exactly halfway between Jerusalem and Caesarea, there was another Roman fortress, the fortress of Antipatris. And that's why Paulo is taken from Jerusalem to Antipatris. He is imprisoned here, spends the whole night in the city, and the next morning he is taken to Caesarea to Felix. Walking through these original streets is really connecting to a past. Everything we're seeing here, folks, was built by Herodes and was here at the time when Paulo walked through these same streets. There's a good chance that we are literally walking on the same stones that Paulo walked on his way to prison. What stands out the most nowadays in Tel Afec is this colossal fortress with 4 side towers. But is this the original fortress of Antipatris where Paulo was imprisoned? Let's go inside together to find out. Wow! The place is even more impressive when we go inside. Here at the fortress, we can see the size, the original area it had. And I don't know if you can see and probably also hear the number of children that are here today. There are a number of school trips that came here. And I think this is also a good opportunity for us to talk a little about the education given to future generations. The Bible places a great emphasis on teaching future generations, especially on teaching history, as we can see in these verses. Just be careful, very careful, so that you never forget the things your eyes have seen. Keep them in your memory for your whole life. Tell them to your children and your grandchildren. The stones will serve as a sign for you. In the future, when your children ask you what these stones mean, answer them. These stones will be a perpetual memorial for the people of Israel. And in the book of Psalms, the following is also written, "My people, listen to my teaching and incline your ears to what I have to say. We will not hide them from our children. We will tell the next generation about the praiseworthy deeds of the Lord, His power, and the wonders He has done. He decreed statutes for Yaakov and established the law in Israel, and commanded our ancestors to teach them to their children, so that the next generation would know them, even the children yet to be born, and they in turn would tell their own children. Then they will put their trust in God, will not forget His deeds, and will obey His commandments. But for now, let's stay here in Afek, in this great fortress. We know that the Egyptians, the Canaanites, the Greeks, King Herod, and also the Turkish Ottomans built fortresses here in Afek. But why did all these peoples decide to build a fortress in exactly the same place? What is so special about this place? There are two reasons. The first is that right here behind us is the source of the Ayakon River, the second largest water source in the whole country. And whoever controls the water and also the farmland here really has a lot of power and dominance. And besides that, Tel Afec is in a strategic location because the major trade routes passed through here, the Via Maris, which connected Egypt to Mesopotamia, and with trade came taxes and wealth. And that's why over 5,000 years, everyone wanted to dominate and conquer this place. These walls, this fortress, are a little less than 500 years old, almost the same age as Brazil. But for Israel, for Fetch, 500 years is really not much at all. We're talking about more than 5,000 years of history. And when we walk here, we see what is most recent in this place. But the archaeological excavations done in the middle of the fortress revealed things that are much, much older. And that's what we're going to see now. What we see here is an Egyptian palace that is 3,500 years old. The question is, what were the Egyptians doing here? At this same time, when the people of Israel were slaves in Egypt, Egypt ruled parts of the Promised Land, the land of Canaan. And here is a great example of that. This was an Egyptian governmental center. And when people came here to visit the governor, they could get off their animals and leave them here to drink water. This here is a kind of manger, so the animals would stay here and the person could enter this colossal palace. It had 2 floors. The lower floor where we are was made of stone, but there was a second floor here made of clay bricks. But over time, the bricks disappeared. But here we have the beginning of the stairs that led to the second floor, so we know that there were at least 2 floors in this palace. And inside here, hundreds of Egyptian objects were found, such as scarabs, which are small beetle-shaped amulets. They found seals, small statuettes of Egyptian gods, bottles used for oils, perfumes, and wine. Weapons and instruments of war were also found, such as spearheads and bronze daggers, and of course, hieroglyphic inscriptions were found here as well. Everything we've seen here inside the fortress is truly impressive. But today we came to follow in the footsteps of Paulo, and that's why we want to see not the fortress from the Ottoman period, but the original fortress of King Herodes the Great, the original fortress of Antipatris. And the question is, where is it? There are 2 theories. The first theory is that it is right here beneath our feet, but it simply hasn't been excavated yet. As you can see, a small area here has been excavated, but most of it hasn't. And that makes a lot of sense because the fortress is usually built in the most strategic location, and when the fortress is destroyed, It is often rebuilt in the same place, often reusing part of the original structure or foundations. However, here we can't really be sure if that happened or not, since most of it hasn't been excavated. So could it be that Paulo was imprisoned here where we are walking? Or could it be that he was imprisoned in the other possibility? And the other possibility is actually outside this fortress from the time of the Turkish Ottoman Empire. So let's see the second possibility. We are once again walking on the original floor built by King Herodes the Great. This was the level of the city at the time of Herodes, Jesus, and also Paul. But I want you to look at this here in front of us. We see that the city continues, and suddenly here it starts to rise. It looks like a hill, a mound. What is this? This here is 2,000 years of accumulated earth, sand, archaeological remains, and also plants. The original city, it continues at this same level. We are absolutely certain that if we keep digging in this direction, if we remove all of this here, we will reveal the city that Paulo knew. However, as we can see, this entire area around us has not been excavated. And more than that, when people who were walking around here at the site walked over this mound, they looked down, and among the plants, they realized there were some mosaics. Literally, the mosaics were sprouting from the ground. And then they informed the Israel Ministry of Antiquities, which came here and confirmed that there really are mosaics at this site. And what did they do? They covered the mosaics. They didn't start archaeological excavations. They covered the mosaic to protect it for future generations. But that means we are absolutely certain that there are archaeological remains here. This whole area around us is full of archaeology. So full that archaeology sprouts from the ground. Right here where I am, it came really close to me. If we stop here in a small space, we already find a huge amount of ceramics. These ceramics, guys, could literally be from Paul's time. But look here, the ground is full of these ceramics. Look how beautiful it is too. Some of these ceramics, in fact, are crafted and are from different historical periods. Some are from the time of Paulo, some are later, or they could even be from earlier periods. Let's return the archaeology to its place. But why is the discovery of these mosaics on this hill so important? Because we know that Herod loved to build his palaces and his own constructions with mosaics. We see this, for example, in the fortress of Masada. So could these mosaics indicate a Herodian construction, the fortress of Antipatris? So could it be that underneath these plants, the original fortress of Antipatris is hidden? Or could it be that it's inside the Ottoman fortress, in that large area that hasn't been excavated? The answer is literally buried beneath our feet. We really need to be patient and wait for the Ministry of Antiquities to decide to excavate this whole area in the future and find out exactly where it is. But I can assure you that we are just a few meters away from where Paulo was actually held overnight before being taken to Caesarea. So here, when we walk through Afec, we are following in Paulo's footsteps. But not only his footsteps, because many centuries before Paulo passed through here, the Ark of the Covenant also passed through this place. and inside it were the 10 Commandments, Aaron's rod, and the manna. Now let's find out what the connection is between Afek and the Ark of the Covenant. Let's go! During the time of the Judges, the great enemy of the people of Israel were the Philistines. And there were great battles between these two peoples. And one of the greatest battles happened right here beside us. This battle is described in the first book of Samuel. It is told that the Philistines set up their camp here in Afek. In the Bible, it also appears as Afeka. So the Philistines set up their camp here, and very close to us, the people of Israel set up their camp at Ebenezer. Both peoples are ready, each one leaves their camp, and there is this great battle. And the ones who come out victorious are exactly the Philistines. They win in a huge way. They kill 4,000 people from the people of Israel, and the people of Israel return to their camp in a state of shock. And now they wonder what they can do to defeat the Philistines. And they want God's help. But instead of fasting or praying to God, what they decide to do is, in a way, bring God physically to the battlefield. It is written that God's presence rested upon the Ark of the Covenant, upon the mercy seat. And that's why they go to biblical Shiloh, bring the Ark of the Covenant with the sons of the priest Eli. And then they go to the second battle, this time with the Ark of the Covenant among them. And once again, the people of Israel lose this battle, but in an even more terrible way. This time, 31,000 soldiers of Israel are killed in battle, and the Ark of the Covenant is also stolen. The Philistines finish this great victory, bring the Ark of the Covenant to their camp, dismantle their camp, and go to Ashdod, where they place the Ark of the Covenant inside the pagan temple of Dagon. Imagine the feeling the people of Israel must have had at that moment, knowing that what was most precious to them had been lost because of their own responsibility, and knowing that the Ark of the Covenant was now among pagan idols. However, God then intervenes and sends a plague to Ashdod. The plague keeps happening, and the Ark of the Covenant is taken from city to city until finally the Ark is brought back to the people of Israel, and later also towards Jerusalem. And sometime later, when Solomon builds the Temple of Jerusalem, the Ark will be placed inside it. Don't the Philistines build Fek, a city like the other peoples we've seen so far? Do the Philistines simply come here and set up their camps before the battle? And after their victory, they break down the camp and leave. And that's why the Philistine archaeology of this place is very, very limited, because it's much harder to find anything from a temporary camp than from a city that lasted thousands of years. But doesn't that mean that nothing was found? Weren't Philistine artifacts from the 12th century before Christ found here, exactly from the time of the Judges? Does the history of Afek have many ups and downs? Were there very difficult and harsh moments in the history of this city? Like when Paulo was unjustly imprisoned and stayed here in the city before being taken to Caesarea? Here we also remember the great defeat that the people of Israel suffered at the hands of the Philistines. A defeat so great that the people even lost the Ark of the Covenant. But if you ask me who won at the end of the story, the answer to victory is actually inside the fortress. And I'm not referring to the great walls and the impressive archaeology that we found. In fact, the real victory is all the children who were there. Because the Philistines defeated Israel in the past, but the Philistines disappeared. The original Philistines who had come from Castor came here and lived here for several centuries. But at the end of the 7th century before Christ, the Philistines were conquered by the Babylonians and exiled. And that's when they disappeared from the stage of history. However, the people of Israel did suffer defeats. The people of Israel were exiled and even exiled more than once. However, in 1948, after 1,900 years of exile, the people of Israel returned to their land and once again achieved their independence. And they also won the War of Independence. And in fact, some of the battles took place here in Afec. In the same place where Israel fought its enemies in ancient times, Israel also fought in 1948. And Israel's real victory is to keep teaching the next generations so that they learn the history of our people, the history of Israel, just as it is commanded in the Bible. So the victory is exactly in these children. I hope you enjoyed learning a little more about the fascinating history of Tel Afec. A big hug and see you next time.